Greetings, fellow Planeswalkers. I'm James, and today we're going to be breaking down my favorite deck. The one that I put so much time and effort into was my Chulane Teller of Tales deck. So we're going to go through it real quickly here. I'm going to talk about the commander and then talk about the rest of the stuff. This is a combo deck. It pretty much wants to get Chulane on the field and then cast a lot of little creatures to then get more triggers off Chulane to put more lands on the battlefield to then find a combo and win. So we're going to break it down real quick. Here's 2 and Bant, so it is green, white, and blue for a 2/4 legendary human druid with vigilance that says whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card, then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. He also has an activated ability of 3 and tap. You may return target creature you control to its owner's hand. So, how do we draw cards in this deck besides just playing little creatures? We have a couple ways here. So we have 5 ways to draw cards outside of our commander. The first one we have is Muldrifter. Muldrifter is a 4 and a blue for a 2/2 elemental with flying. It says when it ETBs, you draw 2 cards, has it evoke 2 and a blue, which means you pay that cost. It then sacrifices itself as soon as it ETBs. Puts 2 triggers on the stack, so you can resolve the draw 2 first, and then if you have enough mana and Chulane with haste, or he's been on the field for a while, you can then tap it, bounce it back to your hand, and you can forego that sacrifice trigger. The next one we have is Mystic Remora. Everybody who knows the upper echelon of tiered play knows Mystic Remora. It's the 1 mana enchantment with accumulated upkeep of 1. Whenever target opponent successfully casts a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. That player may pay 4 generic mana to counter this effect. In the same vein as that, we have Rhystic Study. It is synonymous with blue players and synonymous in the kind of the mid-ish, maybe high. I'm not sure about CDH as much. They have other ways to draw cards with their commanders, but this is a 2 and a blue enchantment. It says whenever an opponent plays a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1 colorless mana. So after that, we have 2 creatures here. They virtually exactly the same thing, Wall of Blossoms and Wall of Omens. So Wall of Blossoms is a 1 and a green for a 0/4 plant wall with Defender. This is when ETBs, you draw a card. You have Chulane on the field, you're going to draw 2 cards off of this one. And Wall of Omens is the same, but it's 1 and a white. After that, we have Ramp. Now, our Ramp is essentially going to be the same as our card draw. I don't play that many rocks in this deck because I do have some hate bears in this deck for getting around people playing a lot of mana rocks. So we're going to start off, I'm just going to put them all together really quickly here. We have Arbor Elf, Avacyn's Pilgrim, Birds of Paradise, Findhorn Elves, Incubation Druid, Noble Hierarch, and Paradise Druid. Now, all of these are just 1 mana or 2 mana dorks, which means they come in and they tap for a mana, or like in Arbor Elf's case here, it actually lets you untap a forest. So this could untap a breeding pool if you needed blue. It could untap a temple garden if you needed white. And yeah, Birds of Paradise also lets you tap for any color of mana. Faber Elder here is another really cool little dork. It actually lets you tap for each color among permanents you control, and you add 1 mana of that color. This creature can come down and pretty much tap for Bant. So that's why I love this one so much. It is 3 mana, but I don't see the downside to it. It has vigilance. It comes in with a +1/+1 counter for each color among permanent you control, and then it taps for that many colors. If I was to upgrade the deck a little bit, I'd be adding Bloom Tender here instead of Faber Elder, or maybe taking out another one of my 2 mana dorks and adding in a Bloom Tender. Currently don't have the access to one of them yet. So now, in the ways of mana rocks, we do have 3 here. We have Arcane Signet. Everyone knows Arcane Signet. We have Sol Ring. Just really quickly, Sol Ring, the 1 mana taps for 2 colorless mana. We also have Jeweled Lotus. So this was the first deck that I added Jeweled Lotus into, and then after that I found out kind of not how brokenly or how like inherently broken it can be, but it is 0 mana artifact that says tap and sacrifice Jeweled Lotus, add 3 mana of any 1 mana to your mana pool, spend this mana only to cast your commander. This helps me get out Chulane about 3 turns faster. I can get Chulane out on about turn. I can get actually Chulane out on turn 2. So if I can get Chulane out really super early, and if I then have any other ways of like any other mana dorks or anything, like if I played a turn 1 mana dork, I still have an extra mana left. I can then tap that mana, or tap the mana dork, or however I want to tap my field, to cast a second mana dork, getting the trigger of Chulane to then draw a card and then put a land onto the battlefield. We also have Lotus Cobra is another fantastic little ramp card in this deck here. It is the 1 and a green for a 2/1 snake that says landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you add 1 mana of any color. This thing is fantastic. If you can get more and more dorks in your hand from drawing them off Chulane, and you have a land every time, or if you are able to pick a land up and put it back down again, you can then just generate a butt ton of mana that then lets you kind of just keep going off and keep cycling through this engine that is Chulane, Teller of Tales. So we have gone through the card draw and we've gone through the ramp. Now let's look at the quick spot removal in the deck. We have Aura Shards. It is 1 and a green, 1 green and a white for an enchantment that says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. You're playing a lot of little creatures. This is going to wipe the boards essentially of almost everything. No one's ever going to be able to keep an enchantment or an artifact on the field. We have spot removal in the ways of Beast Within. It is 2 and a green for an instant, destroy target permanent. Its controller gets a 3/3 green beast. We have Flusterstorm. This is more of a counter spell, but I mean, I don't really have a spot for counter spells. Actually, I do, right down here. So I'm going to move that down into the counter spell section. We'll talk about that in a second. Night of Autumn is 1 green and a white for a Dryad Knight 2/1. It says when it ETBs, you choose 1, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Night of Autumn, or destroy target artifact or enchantment, or you also can gain 4 life. So if you need the life, you kind of choose that one. It's in here for that destroy target artifact or enchantment. It's a bit of a redundant effect with Reclamation Sage, which is a 2 and a green that does the exact same thing, but it's not modal, it's only singular, so it only comes in and destroys the target artifact or enchantment. After that, we have Pongify. Pongify is a 1 blue mana instant. This is destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated, and its controller creates a 3/3 green ape creature token. If you want to get anything off the field for a couple of turns and don't really, it's got like indestructible or anything else, you can use Reflector Mage to do that, to get rid of it for a couple of turns. It's 1 white and a blue for a 2/3 human wizard. This is when it ETBs, you return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. That creature's owner can't cast spells with the same name as that creature until your next turn. This kind of gets rid of those pesky Shadowborn Apostle decks if you are versing one, because you can bounce a Shadowborn Apostle back to their hand if they don't have 6 to sacrifice them, and then you can basically tell them they can't cast anymore until your next turn, which then you just bounce it back to your hand with Chulane at the beginning of the next end step, and then play it again on your turn, and they will basically kind of shuts off their deck. Kind of mean, kind of worth it. The last one here we have is Swords to Plowshares. This is the very common commander removal spell. It is 1 white, you exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to the creature's power. So after that we have 1 singular board wipe in Supreme Verdict. It is 1 white and a blue for a sorcery. It says it can't be countered and it destroys all creatures. I love that card. We also have, let's go through our counterspell package here real quick. We have Arcane Denial. So it counters target spell. That spell's caster may draw up to 2 cards at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep, and you get to draw a card. So you get to cantrip yourself with this one. You're going to give your opponent a card, but I mean, you're only down 1 card across the table. We have Counterspell, 2 blue, counter target spell. We have Dovin's Veto. It is white and a blue for an instant that says this spell can't be countered, and it counters target non-creature spell. We also have Fierce Guardianship. It is 2 and a blue, or its alternate cost is free if you have your commander on the field, which you want to have your commander on the field for most of the game. Hopefully, or you want to use one of these counter spells to kind of stop Chulane from being removed. It just counters target non-creature spell. We have Frilled Mystic, 2 blue and 2 green for a 3/2 elf lizard wizard with flash that says when it ETBs you may counter target spell. This one here is really cool, as well as Mystic Snake. It's the same thing. It is 1 generic green, blue, blue. It does exactly the same thing. And with Chulane, you can bounce this back to your hand, and you just basically have free ramp, card draw, and counter spell for 4 mana. It's a little bit expensive, but you know, I've been able to get into those kind of locks where it's just always, you know, I basically have the counter spell whenever I need it, and my opponents can't do anything. The last one we have here is Render Silent. So it is white, blue, blue for an instant that says counter target spell. Its controller can't cast spells this turn. So this is a good way just to shut down your opponents, to then just saying no more. You can't do anything the rest of your turn. All you can really do is attack and then pass the turn. So we have a couple of bounce creatures here as well. These are almost the cornerstone of the deck because you're able to then cast them for cheap and then get them back straight to your hand to then cast them again to then keep going and fueling the Chulane plan. So we have here is Baron Talarian Archmage. It is 1 blue blue for a 2/2 legendary wizard. It says when Baron Talarian Archmage enters the battlefield, return up to 1 other target creature or planeswalker to its owner's hand. This can bounce your opponent's things if you need to, but it says at the beginning of your end step, if a permanent was put into your hand from the battlefield this turn, you draw a card. So there's another really cool way of drawing cards. We have Men of War, Shrieking Drake, and White Mane Lion. They all do exactly the same thing. They're all going to ETB and then bounce back to bounce back to your hand. Sorry, but Men of War is a little bit different as it is able to target opponents' things. So when Men of War enters the battlefield, I return target creature to its owner's hand, and then Shrieking Drake is 1 blue, and it also has flying, and it is a 1/1. And then my favorite is White Mane Lion. It is 1 and a white for a 2/2. This one has flash, so if you have mana on your opponent's turns, you can keep doing this. If you have lots of white mana, you are able to keep bouncing back a ghost town. Oh, where'd it go? Yep, you can keep bouncing back the ghost town. This one here has an activated ability if it's your opponent's turn to return it back to your hand before the Chulane trigger goes off. So this is in your hand when Chulane triggers. You can then put it back on the field again, tap it again with a white mana, bounce it back to your hand, and then cast White Mane Lion again, and just keep fueling that Chulane plan. You really want to be cycling through your library as fast and as quick as possible in this deck. We do have here some evasion. So we have evasion in the ways of Cyclonic Rift. If your opponent's boards are getting way too big, you just overload Cyclonic Rift. It bounces all your opponent's permanents back to their hands. Sorry, all their non-land permanents. We have Flawless Maneuver. If anyone wants to board wipe us, or if we want to be cheeky and cast Supreme Verdict and then cast this for free, we can make all of our creatures get indestructible, and it's kind of a one-sided board wipe for, I think it's like 6 mana. What's that, 4? Yep, so 7 mana, you can kind of do that. It's really easy to get to in this deck. You're going to have a lot of mana all the time. Then we have Teferi's Protection. This is a 2 and a white for an instant that says until your next turn, your life total can't change and you have protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out and you exile Teferi's Protection upon resolution of the spell. So that's a kind of a good way if someone wants to kind of get rid of your board or do something you don't want to do and you have the mana, just T-Pro out of there. See you later. I'll see you next turn. Bye-bye. We're going to go through the utility creatures here first. We have Archaeomancer. So it is 2 and 2 blue for a 1/2 human wizard that says when Archaeomancer enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery card from the graveyard to your hand. That's going to come important really quickly. We have Deadeye Navigator. So it is 4 blue blue for a 5/5 spirit with soul bond, which means you can pair this creature with another unpaired creature when either enters the battlefield, they remain paired for as long as you control them both. It also says as long as Deadeye Navigator is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has the new activated ability of 1 and a blue to exile this creature, then return it to the battlefield under your control. This combos really well with Peregrine Drake here in the utility creatures. It just gives you infinite mana. So this is 5 mana, 2/3 Drake flying. When it ETBs, you untap 5 lands. So you get to tap 2, float 3, tap more, just make infinite mana, just go absolutely ham, and I love it. We have Destiny Spinner as one of my new utility creatures in here. It is 1 and a green for a 2/3 enchantment creature human that says creature and enchantment spells you control can't be countered. The rest of the text is invalid in this deck as I'm not touching anything with lands, but that first part of the text is important and very amazing in this deck because I want to be casting a lot of enchantments and a lot of creatures. We have Eternal Witness. Everyone knows Eternal Witness. It is the 1 green 2/1 shaman that says when it ETBs, you may return target card from your graveyard to your hand. We have Seedborn Muse. 3 green for a 2/4 spirit. It says untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. If you have White Man Lion, this is just going to draw you a lot of cards. It's awesome. And then a new one from Zendikar Rising came out, and it is Thieving Skydiver. It is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Merfolk Rogue. It has Kicker X, and X can't be 0, has flying, and says when it ETBs, if it was kicked, you gain control of target artifact with converted mana cost X or less. If that artifact is an equipment, you attach it to Thieving Skydiver. It's a really cool way to get rid of some of the pesky enchantments. You kind of grab people's boots if you need to and move them over to Chulane. You can grab people's mana rocks if you don't have any of the Staxy hate pieces on the board. And what are those Staxy hate pieces? Let's go through them right now. So we've got Aven Mind Sensor. It is a 2 and a white for a 2/1 bird wizard with flash and flying, and says that if an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards of their library instead, making them whiff a lot of times. It's great. The other one is Blind Obedience. It is 1 and a white for an enchantment with Extort, so it means that whenever you cast a spell, you can pay an extra white mana in this deck, and then you can make your opponents lose 1 life, and you gain that much life. So you're gonna make them lose 1, you're gonna gain 3. It's kind of helped me out in sticky situations where I've been attacked and I needed to gain just a little bit of life to kind of get myself over the threshold to be able to find one of my combo wins. It also says artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Really good against any of the decks that want to play a lot of treasures, because you have to tap to sacrifice them, so you kind of shut them down for a turn. Like Smothering Tithe is another good one example of that. So we have Collector Oof. This also shuts down treasures and all mana rocks, and anything else that has an activated ability that is an artifact. So it is 1 and a green for a 2/2 Oof that says activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. I love this card and people hate this card. We have Deafening Silence. It is 1 white mana for an enchantment. It says each player can't cast more than 1 non-creature spell each turn. We have Draneth Magistrate. 1 and a white for a 1/3 human wizard that says your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands, which means they cannot cast their commanders. We have Hull Breacher. So it is 2 and a blue for a 3/2 Merfolk Pirate with flash. If an opponent would draw a card except for the first one they draw on each of their draw steps, instead you create a treasure token. So it's kind of a nombo with Collector Oof, but you kind of work around it and kind of play around it to see like when you can and can't play it, essentially. We have Lavinia, Azorius Renegade. I'm just going to get rid of the foiling here real quick. She's white and a blue for a 2/2 legendary creature human soldier that says each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. She also says whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, you counter that spell. That's why I love it. So basically it's going to get rid of all of the 0-drop artifacts, 0-drop not lands, but 0-drop creatures, 0-drop counter spells. It just hoses your opponents, and it's fantastic. So we have enchantments to go next. We have Allurin. I love this card. It is a Tempest card. It is like my favorite card in the deck. It is 2 and 2 green for an enchantment that says any player may play a creature card with total casting cost 3 or less whenever he or she could play an instant and without paying its mana cost. So it essentially gives all of your creatures 3 CMC or lower flash, and you also may cast them for free. With Allurin and Lavinia on the field, your opponent's not going to get any value out of this, and you're going to get all the value, and it just makes it super one-sided. And I've done it once in the whole time I played this deck, and it's great. What's better than being able to do all that is being able to do that all at instant speed. So we have Leyline of Anticipation. It is 2 and 2 blue for an enchantment that says if Leyline of Anticipation is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield, and you may cast non-land cards as though they had flash. We have Mana Breach. So Mana Breach is an enchantment that says it's a 2 and a blue for an enchantment that says whenever a player plays a spell, that player returns a land he or she controls to the owner's hand. We also have Mirari's Wake. It is a 5 mana enchantment that says creatures you control get +1/+1, and basically makes all of your lands tap for double. So we're just going to go through the artifacts here real quick, and then I'm going to start talking about some of the combos. So we have Aetherflux Reservoir. It is a 4 mana artifact that says whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell cast. For each spell you've cast this turn. and has activated ability of pay 50 life. Aetherflux Reservoir deals 50 damage to target creature or player. We have Altar of the Brood. It is a 1-mana artifact that says whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So basically, whenever a permanent comes in, you're going to mill one. We have Cloudstone Curio, 3-mana artifact that says whenever a non-artifact permanent comes into play under your control, you may return another permanent you control that shares a permanent type with it to its owner's hand. So, we also have tutors. Forgot the tutors. How are you going to get all these combo pieces if you can't tutor them out and you haven't drawn them? We have Court of Calling. It is X green for an instant with Convoke, which means you can tap your creatures to help you cast this spell. You may search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less, put it to the battlefield, then shuffle. We have Eladamri's Call. It is also an instant. It is green and a white for that says you may search your library for a creature card, reveal that card, put it to your hand, then shuffle your library. And then we have the Bant tutors. We have Enlightened Tutor, which is 1 white. You go and search for an enchantment or an artifact, put it on top of your library. We have Mystical Tutor. It is 1 blue for an instant that says, search your library for an instant or sorcery card and put it on top of your library. And then we have Worldly Tutor. It is the 1 green instant that says, search your library for a creature card and put it onto the top of your library and then shuffle. So that's the deck. Let's just go through some combos really quickly because these are really, really fun. This is the kind of the reason why I put the deck together, not just because I love Bant. Bant is my favorite colors, and I just love Chulane. But we have the Dead Navigator Peregrine Drake combo to make infinite mana. If you also have the Altar of the Brood on the field, that is also infinite mill. If your opponents have any Eldrazi, it kind of stops that plan. But by then you should be able to have some sort of draw on the field where you can then just keep drawing cards. We also have Archaeomancer, Ghostly Flicker, which I didn't talk about, but I will talk about in a second. Ghostly Flicker and not Eternal Witness, and Peregrine Drake. So that's also another infinite mana combo. So Ghostly Flicker lets you basically exile 2 target artifacts, creatures, and or lands you control, then return them to the battlefield under your control. So you flicker the Archaeomancer and the Peregrine Drake. They're both ETB at the same time. Then the Archaeomancer gets you the Ghostly Flicker back to your hand. Peregrine Drake then gets you 5 lands to basically untap. And then if you also have Aetherflux Reservoir on the field, this is also infinite casts, which means you're going to gain all the life you need to then shoot your opponents in the face and win the game. We also have Mana Breach and Shrieking Drake. So Mana Breach lets you basically, whenever you play a land, you bounce a land back to your hand. If you have Chulane on the field, this also gives you infinite draws because you're casting Shrieking Drake. So it gives you infinite draws and all of your lands onto the battlefield. So what you do is you tap a blue mana, so tap an island or anything that comes in untapped that produces blue. You then bounce it back to your hand, use that floating blue to then cast Shrieking Drake. Shrieking Drake will then trigger Chulane. Chulane will then let you draw a card and then put a land in the battlefield. You then put the land back into the battlefield, and then Shrieking Drake will then bounce back to your hand with its ETB trigger. You then tap it again, keep going, see the loop, just keep going. If you want to do anything else like that, we have Cloudstone Curio and Allurin with any of our 3-drop creatures, 3 or less drop creatures. Again, just lets you bounce them and keep going, and will obviously still give you all of your draws, all of your library in your hand, all of your lands on the field, and you can then just get into another one of these win cons. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck. You want to slow your opponents down. You want to break parity by, abusing Chulane's trigger, playing as many mana dorks as you can, and that's it. So that has been my Chulane, a Teller of Tales Bant combo list. If you liked this list, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and leave a comment on the video for the algorithm. Don't forget to subscribe. If you want to support us on Patreon, you can do that at patreon.com/commanderatarms. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at cmdr@arms. We also have this brand new merch shirt. I'll have that in the video's description below as well. And I think that's about it. So with that, I'm James, and this has been a new Commander at Arms deck tech. Peace.
See ya.